Hey guys, how's it going? VaulSC here. We're going to talk about a game between the Combined Army and PanOceania. Just the vanilla factions, none of the sectorial carry-on, and it's going to be a game of firefight. Straight up, war of attrition, guns, blasting. Another really special and interesting thing about this game that we're going to look at is that both of us voluntarily and coincidentally are playing limited insertion 10 order lists, so it's going to be the 10 models on either side, just like God intended. And I've been really looking forward to doing this bat rip actually, because it turned out to be quite an interesting one. Both of us running lists which are a little bit unusual, a little bit eyebrow raising, so we'll talk about that in a moment. But let's get over to the table. Got a whole bunch of pictures here. So it's Firefight, just a bit of a refresher for those of you who maybe haven't played it recently or can't remember much about it or haven't played a lot of infiNity. Firefight is probably the most attrition, sort of annihilation-based missions. Even though there is a mission called Annihilation, I always make the joke that Annihilation ought to be called Slightly Classified because it's so easy to get into the same points bracket as your opponent in terms of kills, and then the Classified makes the difference. Whereas Firefight, maybe that should be called something else. Anyway, there are 3 panoplies in the middle. You gain a bonus objective point if you've raided the panoplies more often than your opponent has, or sorry, if you've had more of your models get something from the panoplies. There's a bonus point to pick up from the classified. You can get a point for destroying more specialists than your opponent. You can get 2 points for killing their lieutenant more often. And then, of course, there's the 3-point swing for just having more army kills. I like this mission. I think it's good. I do like missions where the emphasis is on actually killing more stuff, having that attrition-based game. I find that is very intriguing, despite what most people would think intuitively, that it's just about, you know, going up against the enemy and killing as much stuff as you can, ignoring objectives. It's not really like that at all. It's about conserving your own models. It's about always being aware of how much a particular model costs in terms of points. I find that interesting. Neither of us are playing any drop troopers, although there's a special rule for drop troopers in this mission. It does need to be said, though, that deployment zones are more like 16 inches out, like way out here, where you can deploy a lot further up, so you get to grips with your opponent much more quickly. So that's a little bit of a rundown on the mission. Let's talk about the lists, because I know that you guys want to get into the lists. So here is a list that I don't run that often. It's a bit quirky, but I have run it a number of times before. I've played it twice in YouTube bat reps and once on Tabletop Simulator. It is a list that features both the Charonted and the Anathematic. So the premise of this and the thinking behind this really is that I like both models. I think that they are legitimate. They're not the best and most broken thing in the game, but both the Charonted and the Anathematic are viable and useful and really kind of cool, to be honest. But whenever I try and write a list with just one of them in it, I'm trying to, you know, go 2 order groups, make sure I've got 10 orders here and maybe 13, 14 orders, 15 orders here, and I spread things a bit too thin, and I find that that one model needs to be pulling too much of its weight to get the list to work. Then again, when I'm going limit insertion, I've got that model, then you add a whole bunch of other extra things in it, and it's also a little bit awkward because most of the other things you're squeezing in there are medium range troopers, and I do find that the orders are spread a little bit thin. There's a few different things there which, you know, are very order hungry. Then there's this list where there's the Charonted and the Anathematic, and they work in tandem in certain ways. They're a little bit of an interesting team. Both models have access to the mnemonica profile, and whenever you have access to that profile, you want to go for it because mnemonica is always worth having. But the intriguing thing is that only one of them is gonna have mnemonica at a time, and only one of them is needed to benefit from it, freeing up your other model to go for one of the rarer non-mnemonica profiles. So the way I run it is that I have the Charonted as a lieutenant. He's the one that's better at providing the arrows at the back line. MSV 3, HMG, Ballistical 14, Armor 5, 2 wounds plus NWI makes him very, very good at tanking. providing very annoying arrows, discovering units automatically. He's very, very strong in that role, and even though you're playing him passively, you're getting the value out of him in terms of, you know, willpower 16 lieutenant, and, you know, not going into lost lieutenant if he does die, that sort of thing. Whereas the anathematic, suddenly you can put him into hidden deployment without going into Lost Lieutenant, for example. You can choose to profile with the Sepsitor, which is what I go for in my case, and he still has the plasma rifle. And he could be used as an attack piece, which is something you always kind of want to do with the anathematic, but if you're taking the Lieutenant option, it's usually the Lieutenant hacker. You don't want to run into a killer hacker. You don't really want to lose him. And it's not really that comfortable, whereas this list allows you to do that. Still, it's a kind of a zany list in the sense that you've got 2 models taking up more than half your army points, or around about that, leaving you with very little left in the list. You've got all the Echidrons and Ardrones and support stuff back there. There is a little bit of something though. You've got the Krakot Renegade, who does a little bit of work. Sometimes your first turn will consist of him attacking rather than the anathematic if there's not a good opportunity. This list doesn't do great against, say, Hakislam because of the Emirats and the Jammers, and that was going to ruin any anathematic's day, whereas the Krakot may be sent in first in that sort of scenario if you have to run this list against that sort of faction, and the Krakot can actually clear a bit of that. Bit and Kiss, I quite like them. Very good specialist. They can do a little bit of shooting. They're quite handy, and killing an enemy hacker may help if you're planning on moving your anathematic in there in a position where he might be vulnerable to hacking. That pitcher may come in handy for that. And then the Noctifer, another powerful ARO piece to back up the Torontid. I find that quite interesting because if they're going after that juicy Torontid target, armor 5 and cover, and they're going to be spending a bit of time attacking it, you may have an ARO trap waiting for them right nearby with the Noctifer if you want to. So yeah, this is a list I've run a few times. I find it's a bit feast or famine, really. The first time I ran it, the Bat Reps on my YouTube channel, it was up against Steel Phalanx, and I just had the worst run of luck. I absolutely got smashed. And then, actually no, that wasn't the first time. The time prior to that, I had a little bit of bad luck also. The Torontid died, but my opponent made some sort of silly positioning mistake, and I managed to win anyway, even though I was behind. A bit of a bizarre game. But I also played on the tabletop simulator and had a little bit of good luck and just wiped my opponent out within 1 turn. That anathematic can be very strong with its plasma rifle. And another thing I forgot to mention is that the Torontid, if you're going first, for example, can shoot down any of the annoying arrows that might try to, fend off the anathematic, like war cores and flash pulse bots and things like that. So they're mostly going to hide when they see you deploying your Torontid, allowing you to move your anathematic over there and let rip with the Sepsitor plasma rifle from close range, and that's where he's the strongest. So this is our combined army list. Moving to the Pano list, we also have a bunch of stuff to say about this one as well, because this is also a bit of a weird one. So we have a Seraph, and a Cutter, and Joan of Arc. So this is a list where you're sort of scratching your head and going, well, once you've bought those 3 models, can you even afford anything else? And the answer is, well, not really. There's Halot, Fusilier, Warcore, Monstrucker, Tech B, 2 Fugazis. The beauty of Joan is that she's just so efficient nowadays, even more than she used to be, because she's counting the new Monstrucker and the new Halot as regular troops, so you can get away with these cheap cheerleaders. But as you can see, it's a sort of a bit of a duo, sort of tandem job, really, with those 2 massive tags. Difference being that Joan of Arc can also fight. So there's 3 very strong models in the list, and everything else is there just in support. 2 immediate weaknesses jump out at me about this list. Number 1, no hackers, and you've got 2 models which are extremely vulnerable to hacking. So if you run into some sort of camo assault hacker, that's pretty bad. Secondly, there's no MSV2 to be seen at all, so as you're moving your tags out to shoot people, they may be throwing smoke around. You may have heard of the term sacrificial smoke. That's where you come in range of a guy who has smoke grenades, he throws it somewhere else so as to not make it a face-to-face roll, but a normal roll, and then after the smoke's landed on things you're planning on killing later, you just don't have that opportunity. The tags themselves, though, are so beefy with their shooting that usually they can take out TO snipers and things like that, just with their high ballistic skill, but smoke can be a little bit of a problem. Another thing that can be an issue is loss of the cheerleaders and things. I mean, you don't have a lot of chain rifles and bits and pieces to defend your deployment zone. There are the nanopulses and things there, and you're really relying on the cutter to come out of hidden deployment and shoot at things as it's approaching your line. But yeah, there can be problems. Drop troopers, spec fire, infiltrators, various different things that might get around and kill these guys at the back. Just like the Combined Army list that I'm playing, you run out a bunch of orders and your very powerful units are very order-starved. So very intriguing matchup. Let's get into the game. So here's the table again. I managed to win the dice roll for Lieutenant Willpower 16 guy. You expect that, although Jones pretty up there as well. But I did opt to go first because seeing what matchup I was up against, not knowing what was on his list, I still felt that the Anathematic needed to get in there early and get into a position where he's standing in front of them, forcing them to either dodge or shoot back at me. If they dodge, plasma rifle to the face. If they shoot, maybe a Sepsitor to pick up something really, really powerful. So here comes my deployment. I'm putting everything down on the table. Anathematic is in hidden deployment, but I'm just placing the marker to show where he is, right? So he is in hidden deployment as part of the initial round of deployment. Your Trontid's right in the middle. He's there to show my opponent there's a Trontid there, and hopefully that deters my opponent from leaving a lot of ARO pieces out that are easily killable with it. Little slave helper worm here is going to come around and repair him later if he goes down. What I'm told is that if you take 2 wounds and go into NWI, that counts as an unconscious state, and you can be healed up out of that. I'm told. I'm not 100%. There's a flashball spot here. Datratsu around the corner, along with an Icadron there, just staying out of line of sight. The Datratsu wants to move in and throw smoke for the Trontid to benefit from, potentially. Very powerful combo. Bit of a zoom out and look at the left-hand flank. So we're just looking at the models over here, as you can see. There's the Anathematic position and the Trontid position there. Then we've got Dr. Worm over here, another Icadron right at the back. I am a little bit wary that there could be some drop troopers coming on my back line in this mission because of the rules. HVT over the side here. Bit on the top here, prone on this this walkway, and then Kiss down on the bottom. Because of the positioning of this truck and this building, you can't sort of see through from the deployment zone to Kiss's position. So just going to hang up there and may use one of my first orders to move into cover. Then there's a Krakot Renegade appearing here. Did manage to pick up the Metachemistry roll for Climbing Plus. So looking forward to that with the extra speed. Note that because of 4 deployment level 1 and the additional deployment range of the deployment zones in this mission, he's 20 inches up. Very long way into the board. So there's another look at my troops from the left-hand side of the table. Using Mine Layer ability to put down a repeater, one of the abilities that Bit can make use of. Another glamour photo of my beautiful Trontid and flashball spots. Now moving on to my opponent's side, so we've got a Walker. Remember, he is prone rather than providing arrows because they need his order. Like he actually does provide 1 regular order because of Inspiring Leadership from Joan. We've got a Pleb Lieutenant, just 10-pointer. Flashballs here, just coming off this little alleyway. This model is actually one of the decoys of the Helot. This model here, I believe, is the real Helot. There's a Monstrucker on the stairway also. And somewhere around here, there's actually a cutter in hidden deployment. So just bear that in mind. Then the giant and wonderful Seraph in the middle. He's running the HMG Seraph, which I feel is an improved profile. On a tag that starts in deployment zone with super jump and stuff, it's better to have a HMG than a Spitfire in my opinion. And now that he's lost the Orc spot, he can be involved in coordinated orders, which is very significant when you're running Joan. So that's the real Helot there. This is a decoy. The other one over there is a decoy. So Cutter is in hidden deployment over that side. They've got another flashball spot here. Joan is about to be positioned here, but she's the reserve trooper. And there's a Tech B. So that's that. Oh, and there's a, you can see there that that's actually a HVT. And there's a close-up of the HVT having some sushi at the sushi corner. My reserve trooper is a Noctifer with a missile launcher on top of this building, prone, and he's got a beautiful long line of sight down here. And one great thing about this is that the Monstrucker positioned here would have to move past his line of sight to get to the Seraph if the Seraph was to die in a flaming ball of plasma for whatever reason. So I quite like the Noctifer's position here, and he's sort of quite close to the Trontid as well. Hopefully they'll make a very good team. Joan of Arc prone behind some boxes, fairly near to the Seraph. Wants to stay out of harm's way because it's the tags doing most of the heavy lifting in the game plan. Alrighty, placing a data pack next to my Charontid. You get a bonus objective point if you kill the opponent's data tracker in this mission. The Charontid, even though he's going to be doing a lot of shooting and getting shot at, if I do lose him, I'm probably going to lose the game, just given how important he is. And also, he's quite survivable as well, because if he does get hit, he can just drop prone behind that planter. And luckily, this planter here is a saturation zone and -3 Viz to things that don't have MSV, so he's in a wonderful position behind that. So first, Impetuous Order, the Datracer moves around the corner and doesn't really do much else with his second shot skill. Then the Anathematic is going to be moving out. So I thought about it for a little bit, and then I thought, well, you know, you've got to go hard. If you're going to spend all those points, you're going to take that profile. Really what you want to do is run around here, get to the position behind the truck, and just shoot all of your bullets into the position of the Seraph. So that's the plan. You know, if you lose the Anathematic, obviously it's a lot of points, but if you're trading him for roughly equal points and taking out several orders on your way there and depriving your opponent of a very powerful tool to attack you back, that's probably going to put you in the lead, right? Also, the Anathematic is very resilient, you know, TO camo and effectively 3 wounds. So for your opponent to destroy it in retaliation might take the entirety of their turn, putting the tempo back into you for a bit of momentum to get things done. So after a bit of thought, we're straight in there. Note that he's having to walk past the Helot's line of fire, or the decoy Helot. I don't really know it's the real one at this point, but he decides not to try and reveal and discover me, which is fairly wise, I'd say. Also, there's a Krakot moving up a little bit here. We did spend a coordinated order as I'm moving the Anathematic out. So Anathematic is starting in this location. He's moving over to here where the silhouette marker is there, and moving up the stairs a little bit prone with the Krakot. The Datrace moving back around the corner from whence he came with his share of the coordinated order as well. Then we have the very ominous alien creature moving towards the human line, and the plan is to come around the side of the truck. So you can sort of see what I have in mind here. We want to set up in a position where we can eliminate the Tech B and eliminate the flash pulse spot, hopefully not getting stunned in the process. Otherwise, you know, that would be me having to run all the way back home and try and conserve my Anathematic. I mean, it's potentially possible, but not likely. Taking out these two easy targets initially means that my opponent will be down to 8 orders for the rest of the game, but more importantly, it puts him in a position to tempt the cutter to come out from here. I do know that he's running a cutter because this is the same list he was running in the last tournament we were at, and he was playing this list a fair few times, so I know that there's a cutter there. There's only one slot left in his list also. But if the cutter doesn't reveal, the Anathematic is essentially shooting at the Seraph for several orders, and it's with a plasma gun at optimal range band with no cover. The Seraph's only armor 7, I say only, I'm comparing it to other tags. Plasma gun going to be damage 14, forcing 2 rolls, so the chances are we're going to wipe him out. So in we go, Anathematic appears, and the first surprise attack, I'm splitting my burst between the Tech B and the Flash Pulse spot, and annoyingly, he doesn't kill either of them, even though he's spraying them with a deadly plasma. So that was kind of a slap in the face, and one order burned, which kind of made me very nervous. Luckily, the second order spent did manage to destroy them. Okay, so you can see here, he's not actually splashing the template onto both of them at once. He's having to split his burst, just given the positioning. I'm just going to move my cam, actually, so you can see Tech B and Bot being wiped out. And then he can just shuffle around a little bit to get line of sight of the tag. And the tag's not going to get cover from his position. So you can see here, I've taken a bunch of photos, but we're moving into strike. Anathematic going in. As this photo was taken, there's already a wound marker on him. And for the remainder of the turn, the Anathematic just lets rip with the plasma. Joan is prone. I considered making a dash for it, and as I was shooting, moving across here, and then forcing her to react and potentially sepsitrizing her. But the problem with that move is that you're having to contend with the Seraph as you're doing that. His cutter may have appeared, a Helot may have used neurocynetics and a light rocket launcher with fire damage no less through this angle, and he could have revealed his cutter. So I think it would have been a mistake to move the Anathematic through to that position. I was considering it though. But instead, Anathematic going at it against the Seraph. I took a ton of photos. We can just shuffle through them all, and I can turn it into like a mini animation. But the end result was that the Anathematic, after a bunch of attempts, did reduce the Seraph to 0 wounds, making him unconscious. Then, seeing that he still had a Monstrucker, I decided to risk it and spend a last order shooting him, even though he was unconscious, to remove him, which I did succeed in doing. And the final order had me placed in a position where the Anathematic's peeking out just enough so he can see Joan if she stands up, but no further around than that. Now that's going to be important later, but we'll come back to that a bit later in this battle report. So the turn ends with the Anathematic just hanging around the edge and having a line of sight to where Joan would be if she stood up, but not in line of sight of Joan, and we turn the table back to our Pano friend. So after thinking a fair while about his position, he's down 3 orders and lost a Seraph, and if you add up the points of the Seraph and the Flashball Spot and the Tech B, pretty similar to the Anathematic. So with the remaining orders here, he does reveal the Cutter. The Cutter is in line of sight of a Nocturne at this point, and is kind of wary about going up against both the Anathematic and a Noctifer. So just carefully, before revealing, just pulling around to the side here, so you can sort of see where he began, around about there, and he's pulling back to this position, and the Anathematic is pictured like there. Okay, so now he's in a bit more of a comfortable spot to shoot. He's going to try and avoid this planter here, because that is going to be a saturation zone, and -3 to hit. So he's going to try and get an angle along there to hit the Anathematic and potentially drive him back into cover, right? So there's the position. We've got a beautiful Cutter appearing out of nothingness, and he fires his big, impressive HMG, and he does indeed hit the Anathematic and force it back into cover with a failed guts check and causing a wound. After that's done, what it allows Joan to do is to crawl around here. She doesn't really want to stand up, otherwise she may get seen by a Noctifer over top of this truck here. Then she can get into this spot next to the truck. Because, for those of you guys not familiar with zone of control shenanigans, there's a bit of a loophole in the infiNity rules, or maybe not considered a loophole by CB, but if you move to within a zone of control of an enemy model, it has to take a zone of control, change facing dodge, or a reset, or just forfeit its ARO, allowing you to use your second short skill to come around the corner into base contact with it, basically denying it from using any direct template weapons or shooting. So this is how Joan will avoid the Sepsitor from the Anathematic. The Cutter, as part of a coordinated order, moving past this building just to provide an ARO down this long corridor here on the right-hand side of the Pano deployment zone. And then it's a matter of Joan getting up, crawling around for a little bit, then standing up and walking towards her destined target. She's got a date with destiny. Luckily for Joan, she's pretty good in close combat, so she pulls the trick that we were just talking about, moves to the edge of line of sight, then comes around the corner. The Anathematic cannot use his Sepsitor against her, and she is able to strike with just a couple of orders left. Now, she's pretty good in close combat, much better than the Anathematic, and she's got a double action close combat weapon, although he is armor 5. Now, unfortunately for me, with just a single order, Joan moves in there, does whack the Anathematic, gets him, and he fails both armor saves, so immediately to dead straight away. I was kind of expecting the Anathematic to die at some point in this turn, but it was kind of annoying that she killed him so quickly. I was hoping to at least deny him some orders. Ideally, I could have ended the turn with the Anathematic just barely alive in close combat with her, and that would have allowed me to maybe send my Dachirazzi over there and actually assist in close combat, or even shoot into the close combat. I'm not really sure, but there would have been an opportunity. But Joan, too good with a sword. A couple of photos for you to enjoy here, like flicking back between them, pretending it's like a movie. Yeah, I just have to flick really fast to pretend like it's an animation. Anyway. So, Anathematic, not Anathematic, Cutter with just an order or two to spare, trying to move around to a point where he can actually shoot the Charonted. The Tronted is behind a miniature forest, so saturation and -3 to hit and all that stuff. Cutter finds that he's at long range, and the odds are really not that good, and no damage done. So Tronted, you can see here, has a line of sight back to this position, and the Cutter was trying to peek that particular wall. So Tronted doing fine, Anathematic not so much. So just hangs back a little bit here. And then we're going to move on. So it just pulls right back after that attempt, and I think we're back to the combined army turn. Oh, before that happens, note we've got a Monstrucker who lays down a drop bear, and that's going to go right next to him on the stairs just to defend against a Krakot Renegade that may be coming his way. Okay, combined army turn 2, impetuous. We've got the Datrazi moving down the road rather than throwing a smoke grenade, just closing in on Joan's position. Unfortunately, there is a Helot, and one of my tactics here was to try and move through here, and if it was the real Helot, lay a smoke template. And hitting on a 17 against the Helot shooting at long range against Mimetism was pretty good for the Datrazi. Unfortunately, this is a point where I did get rather unlucky, and the Datrazi does get hit by the light rocket launcher and loses the face-to-face roll and just dies. So very frustrating, but fortunately for me, it's allowed me to figure out which Helot is the real one, and that's much more useful for moving the Krakot into position, because the Krakot has to come up these stairs along here and then get into grips with some of his enemies there. But there was a decoy here. Now I wanted to know whether that was the real one, because if that was the real one, the Datrazi could have just moved up the table, grabbed something for the Panoplies. But since this one is the real one, and rather than this, it doesn't have line of sight to the Krakot, allowing me to come past with the knowledge that I'm not going to get shot at. So that happens. So yeah, there you go. There's the Datrazi being hit by the light rocket launcher, and that allows the Krakot to move unhindered over the bridge. So the Krakot's planning on moving around here. He does have a lieutenant, not a lieutenant, a Fusilier data tracker there, who I can move in and kill quite comfortably. Although I didn't realize at the time, it probably would have been legal for me to use Climbing Plus to come down the side of the wall into close combat with a Cutter. Problem with that, though, is that I was going to get low on orders by then, and if I just leave the Krakot in base space with the Cutter, Joan can probably just shoot him and kill him in close combat. Kill him by shooting into close combat, which probably would have worked for him. The Monstrucker on the stairs, and the drop bear that he's placed is actually behind this wall, so the Krakot will be able to get his way around. So he does that. Krakot coming in here, as you can see, and this is a better photo to show that the Monstrucker has placed a drop bear, which will defend him, but not the data tracker here. So we've got the Krakot moving right around here. You don't really want to use Berserk, because that allows the Fusilier an opportunity to kill him. The best play here is just to use the Mine in close combat for the +3, but make a regular close combat attack, boosting his CC value up way above 20, giving him +4 to his roll, I think it is, or maybe more, whereas the Fusilier is still just on your basic close combat hit. So the chest mine goes off, destroys the Fusilier, data tracker killed, 1 objective point in the bank. Then he's able to stand up, use his SMG against this unsuspecting Warcore, and successfully shoots him, which is great. That's a really important order to deprive your opponent of when he's got a tag and Joan and stuff like that. So this is the other tactic for dealing with tag lists, is if you can scalpel out all of their cheerleaders, they become fairly ineffective in terms of attacking you. They're still very powerful in ARO, but without the fuel, they start to putter out, I should say. So he's prone in the corner, he's gone into suppression fire, and nothing can really get up there. Okay, we're going to take a look back at the Monstrucker. There's also Joan. So there's a coordinated order with her. This is Pano turn 2, obviously. So inspiring leadership, coordinated order. Monstrucker moves up the stairs a little bit. Joan moves up the street a little bit. And then what we're going to do is place a mine next to the corner. So this time the second drop bear is in a position where when the Krakot reacts to the Monstrucker coming around, he's going to take a mine hit as well as trying to defeat the Monstrucker in that little shot. What happens though is when the Monstrucker comes around the corner, I really wanted to trade with him by trying to beat him in the shootout. So Krakot's going for the shot, 3 dice suppression fire up against cover, and the Monstrucker with his SMG, +3 for range, -3 for suppression. So he's up on me by 3. and unfortunately that does make the difference, and the Krakot loses and dies. But I think it was worth doing, because if the Krakot had actually shot the Monstrucker, I get the points out of him, and there was a small chance that I would have actually passed the armor save on the mine, leaving me in a great position at that point. I did briefly consider blowing up my second chest mine in a direct template against him. The range was just a little bit questionable. It was kind of close. And also, I was kind of a bit greedy. I kind of wanted to have that opportunity to keep the Krakot. So there was that as well. Joan now coming around the corner up against this flashball spot. And this is, I believe, without cover. In fact, I couldn't quite remember what the situation was. But the flashball spot at good range, and Joan is at long range and up against cover and mimetism, so -9, so she needs 6s on 3 dice. Annoyingly, and this was getting frustrating, is that the flashball spot completely whiffed, and Joan won the shootout and killed the flashball spot, when really what she's doing here should have been fairly ineffectual. There we go, so there's her position. She doesn't quite want to come around the corner just yet into line of sight of this Noctifer, because again, the Noctifer, if it does land a pretty good missile on her, that makes things pretty problematic for PanO, going into Lost Lieutenant and losing a very expensive model. So wasn't quite ready to do that. You can also see the corpse of the Datrazi down here. I may be able to doctor him later, which will save me some points. So Joan comes back around the side of the sushi corner. She was previously here. She's knocked out the flashball spot, which was there. She's come back around here next to HVT. This indicates her facing, like in that direction, so she's covering off this side, and she's going to go into suppression fire as well, just in case. My turn. So the Doctor moves out here with his helper bot, his little Doctor Worm slave drone guy, and after spending a couple of orders, we revive the flashball spot, which swings back 8 points towards me. Every point counts in a tight game like this, and also reinvigorates the defense here, where the flash pulse may have another go at Joan, and if I do manage to blind her in the final turn, that would be quite important. Then I decided, well, what if I keep moving the slave drone down the street to this point where that little S1 marker is, to revive the Datrazi? Well, one of my classifieds is what do you call that thing? Experimental drug. So that would net me an objective point, which is not insignificant. That matters. And it pulls back 14 points. But the problem is that there's a very tiny gap where this Helot, if I point him out on the screen here, there's a Helot there, still alive, which has a very tiny sliver of line of sight past these buildings, past the base of the Datrazi, and past this box here. So if the this guy moves into base to revive him, potentially a couple of light rocket launcher templates land there, not only killing the helper bot, but splashing the Datrazi at the same time, inflicting even more damage on him. So I just really couldn't do that. I had to take that that plan back. So this is my last turn, mind you. So what I'm doing instead is I'm figuring, well, if he goes all out against the Torontid with Joan, and it is viable that Joan moves around the corner and gets line of sight to the Torontid and boxes him into a point where he can't sort of guts around into total cover. If the Torontid is killed by that, then I just automatically lose the game. So the Torontid now scuffling away, getting into better position. And what he's doing is he's moving all the way around here. And part of the reason I'm doing this is not just to get him to a better position, but to pick off a flash pulse bot in the distance, because that could make a difference in points. Like, it's going to be quite tight on points. So picking off another 8 points on his side is going to be important. And also this provides a strong point to ARO from against the cutter, which might come around to try and pick off some of my smaller models. So that works. The Torontid does kill it. And a glamour photo of the Torontid. I really love this photograph, by the way. One of my faves of the report. Really looks really good with a Prisma filter as well. Now we come to the final turn for PanO, and my opponent's been eyeing up the board and realizes, or at least suspects, that if he moves the cutter over to here, then moves the cutter onto this this ladder, onto this building here, he's going to be able to shoot at Bit, even though Bit is prone there, because he's counting on the fact that once we place a silhouette on top of this wall, the cutter is going to be able to use the very top of the silhouette here to get line of sight to Bit's position. So that's what he's attempting to do. He's moving across here, getting aeroed by the Torontid, but it's the last turn. For me to get the points out of him, I need to do 3 solid wounds to him. Note that the Noctifer on this side here can also aero him, but the problem with that is that the Noctifer would actually be at long range, which is not great, and still doesn't have that great an opportunity to blow him up, even with the AP explosive around. But, I mean, he's going to be hitting on, I think, a 2 or a 3. -6 for TO, -3 for long range. And if I reveal him, then Joan comes around the corner on his side of the table and potentially shoots him. And Joan would be hitting on 9s, and he would be hitting on 9s on 1 dice because of range cover, those sort of factors. And if I lose the points of my Noctifer, that would probably be enough to swing it in his favor. So I opted not to spring the Noctifer in that position, reluctantly. So here he is. So we've got the cutter, we've got Bit, and we checked line of sight. And I suspected that, you know, with Bit being prone on this, you know, there's going to be part of the building in the way. There's going to be part of the lip of the walkway in the way. And it's just her base underneath that. And if we're just moving perspective, right, it's a really close call to get to her base. So we got out, you know, down onto the table, brought out the silhouettes and had a look. And look, it was just deadly close, like really close. The rules say that you've got to be able to see enough of the model silhouette to equate to the little area of that little box that you see on the silhouette. It was just so close to call, but I decided to just not contest it and give this to my opponent because he's just spending the remainder of his last turn achieving just this one thing. And if I do manage to win this game, I didn't want the outcome of the game to be something like, oh, well, you know, just you couldn't quite see the model that you spent several orders trying to get line of sight to. So, friendly game, decided to let him have it, and he shot Bit and predictably killed her. Note that the Torontid is blasting away in earnest and getting no damage done, and the Noctifer is opting still not to reveal himself. After that, Joan is now moving in and, in fact, going towards the Statuarcy here. So Joan's moving around. The cutter also moving over here, although the cutter's plan is really just to move into range of my HVT, which is on the side of the building, and gain that objective point. So with Joan moving up here, my opponent makes the very interesting play of going here to get towards the Statuarcy and coming out of cover. And I thought, well, it's now or never. I mean, I feel like I may be losing now that Bit's dead. Like, I was fairly confident I was behind on points. Therefore, I have lost the game. So my opponent's just giving me a very slight chance of getting back into it. Meaning that if I activate the Noctifer now, win the face-to-face roll, and Joan fails all 3 of her armor saves, that will actually cause me to win. Which is why I had little other choice, especially with him picking up all these other objective points from Classified, HVT and all that. I had little other choice but to spring the Noctifer here and go for it. So, 0 range bands, I'm hitting on a 12. Joan would be shooting back and hitting me on 9s if she wanted to contest that, but she's already ahead on points anyway, so what I thought he would do is just go for the dodge. He didn't even attempt to dodge. He went for the Classified objective Extreme Prejudice onto the Statuarcy, which is on the ground. So the Noctifer shoots, he hits, it's a 10, Joan picks up the 3 dice to make her armor saves, fails the first one, fails the second one, passes the third one. So she's fine, she's an NWI, and PanOceania get quite a convincing win. So he's picked up his Classified. I think that he was in range of the HVT, couldn't quite remember. By killing Bit, he's evened up the score on specialists. So although I'd killed his Tech B, that's my only specialist kill, he'd got nothing until that, you know, end of game play where he killed Bit. So he gets a point out of that as well. And when we added up the points, he was well ahead in terms of points. We also checked the numbers and found out that even if he hadn't killed Bit, he would still have just barely been in the lead. So I realized there and then that I'd actually made a bit of a miscalculation with the cost of the Seraph. Like, if you come back to it, for some reason I thought that the Seraph was going to be a model that would cost, you know, in the high 80s or 90s. Like, the Anathematic is 88 points, the Seraph is just 79 points, so trading an Anathematic for a Seraph isn't actually worth it. And although I'd got a cut, like a Tech B and a Flashball spot with him, that's only an additional 13 points. So he's really only just traded points there, has the old Anathematic. He's traded 1 order for 3 orders, so that was worth it. But let's just go back to this game and talk about where things went wrong for me. Because satisfyingly, I can really put this game down to a few mistakes rather than luck and rather than the lists. And there may be some of you guys saying, well, I think every game of infiNity is like that, like deep down. I think, it's never really a matter of luck. There's always something better you could have done. And to be honest, every list, you can win with. And to that, I just wholeheartedly disagree. Like, there are definitely some games of infiNity where you outplayed your opponent, you did your best, and luck just completely fucked you over. This wasn't one of those games, but I can guarantee you that the number of games where that actually happened is not 0%. There are definitely some games where it really just was a shame that one player just got so incredibly lucky and the other person didn't. This wasn't one of those games. Secondarily, army lists. It is possible to lose a game because you took a stupid army list and you made mistakes and your opponent just really had a better list than you did. That doesn't come up very much. And there are such things as lists that aren't really viable, but not the case with these lists. We're playing interesting, unusual, kind of zany lists, but both of these lists are viable and can win tournaments and do well. So I wouldn't go back to the drawing board and go, I'm sick of the Anathematic, I'm sick of the Chronted, they're not very good units. They are good units. This is a good list. But what really sort of went off the rails for me, I think, were a few of my key decisions about where to move things and how to move them. If we come back to this situation where the Anathematic has done well, you've taken out the Tech B, you've taken out the Flashball spot, you've destroyed the Seraph. The better way to have played this would have been to completely move back behind the truck with my last order, or to have gone into back into Marcus State. Because with no smoke, if Joan has to move around here and he's in Marcus State, she can't get into close combat with him by using that trick to come around the corner from out of line of sight. If he'd gone behind the truck enough and then done it, I'm pretty sure he would have survived until the following turn, just because it would have taken her so long to get around there, and she can't risk doing something like just discovering him because there's a Sepsitor waiting for her, right? So that would have actually saved me an entire Anathematic, and if you let the Anathematic survive until the next CA turn, well, I think you're pretty much doomed. If he's got another active turn to hit you with, that would have just wrecked you. I know it sounds kind of lame to say this, but sometimes when I'm playing infiNity in a casual mode environment, sometimes I subconsciously let myself do things just that will allow my opponent to get back in the game. Like, I'm hanging out here waiting for Joan to do something, but I'm thinking, well, I feel bad for him that the Anathematic's done so well in this turn. Maybe I should just sort of put him in a position where my opponent has a chance to get back at him. I feel like that's only the subconscious part of me doing that. In reality, I would have played better if I'd known better, and I did legitimately make a mistake. I'm not putting it on me trying to be soft on my opponent or anything, but just putting that out there. Anyway, I don't feel like I played the Anathematic well in those last 2 orders. There's more that I could have done that would have definitely allowed me to win the game on the back of that. Secondarily, forgetting the points cost of the Seraph, or just underestimating it, not a great idea. Another thing that cropped up, I think, in this game was my positioning of Bit and Kiss, obviously, so I shouldn't have left that for granted. I could have used an order on them to move further into cover. The Krakot Renegade, I thought he was played reasonably well, although maybe if he'd gone closer to the Monstrucker, he would have had a better opportunity to use his chest mine. And towards the end of the game, I feel like rather than running away with the Charonted, he should have really just stayed there and let Joan attempt to try and kill him with her last few orders, because she would absolutely have had to spend all of the orders trying to kill him, and as opposed to the Cutter going over there and killing Bit. And with my last few orders of turn 3, I could have actually done more hiding with my more vulnerable units, like hiding Bit and hiding the Doctor or whatever it might be, and hiding the Flash Pulse Bot maybe, and just trying to stave them off with just the Torontid and the Noctifer. But it was a really interesting game, and I really hope you guys enjoyed this bat rip, because it was quite fascinating. And I don't think I'll be playing this particular list a lot, but I'm enjoying cranking it out every once in a while, because it's a list that's not that forgiving, and it actually takes skill. Even though you've got fewer models, and they may seem like more straightforward models to use, as soon as you make a bit of a positioning mistake and lose a model that's worth 70 or 80 points, that's just so impactful in the game. It's not like, losing one wound model to a crit or something like that. You've really got to make sure that you maximize those models of potential to do the damage, but also survive and to retain them. I think that's just so important. Alright, I think I'm just about out of stuff to say. Had a great time with this one. We've got some more content coming up pretty soon, as always, to be honest. Just can't get enough of making bat reps for you guys. So send me around, I'll see you around, and yeah, let's do it.